Hello everyone. So in today's video we will see our first chapter of Indian economic development of class 12th. So our first chapter is Indian economy on the eve of independence. So in this chapter we will study about the uh, about different sectors of the economy like agriculture, foreign, industrial, trade, etc. Okay, what were the situations in these sectors? Okay, during the British rule or during the independence. Okay, so let's start now. First, we will see the agriculture sector here. Okay. Uh, India's economy under the British colonial rule remained fundamentally agrarian. About 85% of the country's population lived mostly in villages and derived livelihood directly or indirectly from agriculture. So, from this, we got to know that during the time of independence or just before the independence, majority of people were uh, pursuing their occupation in agriculture sector, and which is about 85%. Okay, now however, despite being the occupation of such a large population, the agriculture sector continued to experience stagnation and not frequently unusual deterioration. Agriculture productivity became low, though in absolute terms the sector experienced some growth due to the expansion of aggregate area under cultivation. Now, the most important question which arises in the board exams. Okay, the question is, what were the reasons for this stagnation in the agriculture sector during colonial period? Okay, this we can see in our textbook also, textbook question. Okay, and this is question number 3rd. Okay, we can read here. What were the main causes of Indian agriculture stagnation during the colonial period? So okay, so and that particular topic is our answer. Okay, let's see, let's read the causes of stagnation. This stagnation in agriculture sector was caused mainly because of various systems of land settlement. So first reason which we got to know is the land settlement system. Okay, in history also you all have studied. Okay, the land settlement system that were introduced by the colonial government, particularly under the zamindari system. Okay, here we are talking particularly about the zamindari system. Okay, there were 3 systems: zamindari or permanent settlement, okay, mahalwari and rayatwari. So we are talking here about the zamindari system, which was implemented in then Bengal Presidency, comprising parts of India's present day states, eastern states. Okay, the profit. Now, what were the reasons of stagnation? Okay, now here we will see the land settlement system was the reason. Okay, but we will explain it a little bit. Okay, we will see the explanation here. The profit accruing out of agriculture sector went to the zamindar instead of cultivators. Now, this is the main point here. Okay, the profit which was accruing out of the agriculture sector, that was not going to the cultivators, that was not going to the farmers, that was going to the zamindars. Okay, because zamindars were the Britishers hired the zamindars and they were given task to collect the rent from the cultivators. Okay, so the profit were not going to the cultivators, they were going to the zamindars. However, a considerable number of zamindars and not just colonial government did nothing to improve the condition. Now this is the main thing. The zamindars, the colonial government were getting rent. Okay, but they did nothing to improve the condition of the agriculture. Okay, the main interest of zamindars was only to collect the rent. Now here this one thing, interest of zamindars was to collect rent regardless of the economic condition of the cultivators. So zamindars were not aware or were not interested in knowing the conditions, in knowing the economic condition of the cultivators. The main task and the main interest of zamindars was to collect the rent from the cultivators. Okay, this caused immense misery and social tension among the latter. Latter means the बाद वाला जो पर्सन जिसकी हम बात कर रहे हैं. Okay, so this will be our first point. Okay, which will be the land settlement system or zamindari system. Okay, to a very great extent the terms of revenue settlement were also responsible for the zamindar adopting such an attitude. Dates for depositing specified sums of revenue were fixed, failing which the zamindars were lose their rights. Means zamindars were zamindars were not zamindars had to do this unwillingly. Why? Because this was the matter of their job. We can say this was the matter of their job, because dates for the revenue were fixed. Okay, means the government, the colonial government, the British government will ask the zamindar that on 20th of any month you will give us the rent at this particular time. Okay, if the zamindars were not able to give the rent, they give the collected rent to the government, then they were fired, they were kicked out from their task. Okay, so because the rent which zamindar used to collect, okay, they also got some profit from that, they also got some commission from that rent. Okay, so it was like the job for the zamindars. Okay, so this was our second point, that the dates for the depositing specific sums of revenue were fixed, failing which the zamindars were to lose their rights, the rights which were given by the government to collect the rent, the rights will be taken away. Okay, so this was the major fear for the zamindars. Okay, and what are the other reasons? This was our second reason. Okay, third reason is this one. Besides this, low level of technology, lack of irrigation facility, and negligible use of fertilizer all added up to aggravate the plight of farmers. Okay, technology was not there, modern machines were not there, the good quality of seeds were not there, irrigation facility was not there. Okay, mainly it was depend on the cultivation was depend on the monsoon. Okay, so this added to the misery, okay, or the bad situation of the agriculture productivity, or the bad situation of the farmers. Okay, now next is the commercialization of agriculture. Next point which caused the stagnation is the commercialization of the agriculture. Okay, commercialization was good for few farmers only, for the rich farmers. Okay, this could hardly help farmers in improving their condition, as instead of producing food crop, now they were producing cash crop, which were to be ultimately used by industries back home. Okay, now government, the British government forced them to cultivate the cash crops instead of food crops. Okay, despite some progress made in irrigation, India's agriculture was starved of investing in terracing, flood control, drainage, and desalinization of soil, because cash crop requires a lot of water. So this creates a situation of salination. Okay, and which is not good for the soil nutrient. Okay, now because of growing the cash crop, there was a situation of shortage of food crops also, because in India the people, obviously we will eat the rice, wheat and all these are the food crops. Okay, if we will shift to the cash crops, then it could it will improve the condition, but not in that level. Okay, So only I would say rich farmers were able to grow the cash crops. The small and marginal farmers were not able to grow the cash crops. Beside this, while a small section of farmers changed their cropping pattern from food crop to commercial crop, a large section of tenants, small farmers and sharecroppers, neither had resources and technology nor had incentive to invest in agriculture, because this required a lot of investment in technology and all. So only few farmers which were wealthy, they invested in growing the cash crop. Okay, but majority of farmers which were small and marginal, they neither had resources nor they had any capital which they could invest in the agriculture. Okay, so they were in the same situation. Okay, so these are the few points which tell us about the stagnation of agriculture sector. Okay, first is land zamindari system, second is revenue settlement. The zamindars have to have to deposit the collection to the government at the fixed date. Okay, next is commercialization of agriculture. Okay, and another is the investment in agriculture. The farmers neither had resources nor technology nor capital which they could have invested in agriculture. So this was the reason for stagnation in agriculture. Okay. So now our next topic is industrial sector. Okay, so which means that before independence or on the eve of independence, what was the situation in the industrial sector of India? Okay, so as in case of agriculture, so also in manufacturing, India could not develop a sound industrial base under the colonial rule. Okay, means India couldn't develop its industrial sector during its British rule. Okay, even as the country's world famous handicraft industries declined, no corresponding modern industrial base was allowed to come up to take the pride of place so long enjoyed by the former. Means earlier in India, handicraft was very famous. Okay, we all know that. But after the British invasion and after the you know after the government taking up the trade, okay, in India, British government did not wanted India to grow in the industrial sector. Okay, so the primary motive of the colonial government behind this policy of systematic de-industrializing, okay, the motive of government of the British government was to de-industrialize the India. Okay, which was in two ways. Okay, and it is called twofold motive. Okay, the first intention, the first motive was to reduce India's status of a mere exporter of important raw materials, okay, for upcoming modern industries in the Britain. Now, what does this mean? That during the independence of India, or in the in the first half century of 1900, industry in Britain were in the growing phase. Okay, so they need raw materials at a cheaper rate, then only they can produce the finished goods. Okay, now one thing is that India was the resource of the India has the plenty of resource. Okay, so now what Britishers did, they they changed the status of India, okay, from exporter of finished goods to the exporter of raw materials. And where did these raw material were used? These were used in the modern industries in Britain. Okay, because that time the Britain in the British industries were growing. They were in the growing phase. Okay. Now the second motive or second plan which Britishers did was to turn India into the sprawling market for finished goods of those industries so that their continued expansion to the could be ensured to the maximum advantage. So now, if India is exporting raw materials to the Britain, okay, not willingly, obviously, unwillingly, by forcefully, India used to export raw materials to the Britain for British industries. Now they will manufacture that raw materials. They will process that raw material and convert them into finished goods. Okay. Now there should be a market to sell those goods. Okay. So the best market which they could find was the Indian market because of population. Okay. So they found the Indian market suitable for the selling of their goods. Okay, because British industries, British government wanted their industries to grow. And how industry will grow? With the continuous demand from the consumer. Okay, so they choose the Indian market to supply their goods. And after this, what happened? In the unfolding scenario, economic scenario, the decline of indigenous handicraft industries created not only massive unemployment in India but also new demand for the Indian consumer demand in the Indian consumer market, which was now deprived of the supply of locally made goods. Now, what happened? Uh, Earlier, when India used to produce final goods, okay, in India, and they used to sell. Indian consumers used to purchase. Now, what happened? Britishers destroyed the finished goods market. Britishers destroyed the handicraft market. Okay, and now they forced Indians to export the raw materials to the British industries. Now, British industry manufactured these raw materials, processed these raw materials, and convert them into final goods. Then British government imported those final goods to India. Okay. Now, in India, there was a demand for the goods because locally made goods were not available. Okay, locally made goods were not available, so demand was there. Okay, the need was of supply of goods. So what happened? British took the advantage of this situation and they supplied the final goods made by the British industries into Indian market. Okay, this demand was profitably met by the increasing imports of cheap manufactured goods from Britain. Okay, so they imported British goods to the India market. Okay, so that they will get the buyers. British industry will get the buyers. Okay, so that their industry will grow. During the second half of 19th century, modern industry began to take root in India, but its progress remained slow. So in the second half, okay, like after 1950s, okay, sorry, not in 1950s. During the second half of the 19th century, modern industry began to take root in India. Now, modern industry, earlier it was handicraft, now modern industry began to take root in India. Okay, modern industry was allowed to set up in the Indian market, but its growth was very slow. It was not growing as it should be. Okay, the cotton, like for example, which kind of what kind of industries was set up? Cotton mills and jute textile mills. The cotton textile mills mainly dominated by Indians who are located in the western part of the country. So the cotton textile mills were located in the western part of the country. Okay, namely Maharashtra and Gujarat. And jute mills were dominated by the foreigners, were mainly concentrated in the Bengal. So cotton textile mills were dominated by Indians in Maharashtra and Gujarat, and jute mills were dominated by foreigners in Bengal. Okay, so now there's a one line or one sentence which you must know, that there's a TISCO, Tata Iron and Steel Company, was incorporated in 1907. This might come in your exam in the form of MCQ. Okay, so however, there was hardly any capital good industry to help promote further industrialization in India. So if we want to if we want our industries to grow, so we must have capital good industry. Okay, so what is capital good industry? It means the industry which can produce machine tools which are in turn used for producing articles. Okay, so if we want to produce something, for example, we want to produce furniture, so we cannot cut the furniture by hand. Okay, we need some tools. Okay, some sharp tools. So those sharp tools, those machines which are used to process the raw materials, those are called, those tools are made by the firm, and that firm or that industry is called capital good industry. Okay, so there was hardly any capital good industry which could have helped industries to grow in India. Okay, so this was the drawback or the situation of industrial sector in India. Okay, now next topic we will see in the next video. We will study about the foreign trade. What was the situation of foreign trade in India during colonial rule. Okay.